Welcome to the Breeder's Brew, dog breeding podcast hosted by me, Isobel, the canine nutrition coach.
And me, Sarah, the canine family planner.
Together, we'll be promoting responsible breeding by unpicking the minefield of breeding myths and methods for owners wishing to expand their whelping wisdom. Welcome to yet another one of our Q&A episodes on the Breeder's Brew podcast. Not only am I joined by my usual fantastic co-host, Sarah, canine family planner.
Partner in crime.
That's the one. We are also joined by my other partner in crime as well, my boyfriend, Harry, I should say long-term partner. We have obviously been in the Dachshunds together for a very long time, and we thought it'd be great to have Harry as a guest on today because he has naturally a very different approach to life, and dogs are one part of that. Although obviously we live together and the dogs are very much part of the same family, our outlooks on breeding and the way that we give advice, take advice, and what we do for a living is even hugely different. So welcome, Harry.
Thanks for that, Isobel. Thrilled to be here.
Thanks for joining all. So Harry, I'm going to take over because I don't know your background, whether you ever had dogs growing up as a child or anything like that. So it'd be great to know what was your life pre-Isobel in regards to dogs, interactions and ownership.
Yeah, so pre-Isobel, my life was 100% dog-free, believe it or not. It was always a sort of desire of mine to have dogs as a kid growing up, but it's not something that mum and dad were into or any of the family kind of really did. So, my kind of experience and involvement with dogs has been limited to the last 10 years since I met Isobel, which probably doesn't come as that much of a surprise to you, Sarah, knowing her quite well.
Did you? So you didn't have any pets, not even cats, parrots?
So my dad had a strange sort of thing for sort of reptile creatures. I grew up with snakes and lizards and bearded dragons and tortoises. Basically, not the nice kind of fluffy pets that you'd like to have at home. My mum absolutely hated it, but somehow tolerated it. But yeah, we had giant African snails at one point. Why? I don't know.
Okay, that's different. That's alternative. Okay, so because that was my next question, was going to be that, were you not scared of dogs? So some people, where they don't have sort of dogs and pets in the family, they then find it quite alien. But the fact that you were cuddling up to snakes and reptiles, dogs seem quite an easy alternative to that, I suppose.
Yeah, and for me, the big draw was like it's a creature that has a personality, right? Which was way different to looking at the pets that I had as a kid growing up. So it was always a bit like, why have all my friends got dogs or cats or creatures with personalities, and my little pet's just sort of wrapped around my arm. It was always a desire of mine to have dogs growing up, and I think it would always be something that I'd encourage once, if I get to that point where I have a family. I'd definitely want my kids to grow up around dogs.
Yeah, I think dog interactions and ownership brings a sense of caring. Well, obviously the other pets, you still have to care for them and feed them and, make sure they're well looked after and cared for. But I think dogs, because they're in your household, and with other animals, I used to have guinea pigs when I was little. I wasn't allowed a hamster because they were too small and they escape and get lost all the time, and they come out at night. So I had to have the bigger version of guinea pigs.
Yeah.
But they're in hutches. They're not just free roam. Nowadays it's a bit different, isn't it? People have house rabbits and things like that. But back when I was a kid, you had your guinea pig out in the garden, which even now would be questionable. I think sometimes they would say they've got to be undercover and all that kind of stuff. So that's all changed. But they were in the hutches. So unless you made the effort to get them out, you didn't really interact with them. But I find with dogs, they're constantly in your face, aren't they? Because you're in the same living quarters as them. And then you learn all their personality and their quirks and traits and that kind of thing. So your first dog that you've owned has been the miniature Dachshunds.
Yeah, so it's the only breed that I've really got a huge amount of experience with. Albeit now we do have three of them, which is maybe two too many or one too many, maybe at least for myself.
Can't say that on this podcast.
Sorry, no, I think you mean one or two. Not you can't say. I think
Not
you mean
enough.
one or two, not enough. I've got plans for at least another one this year. What? Shut up.
I keep saying to Isabel, yeah, you've got room for one more. I mean, I'm at 6 now. Come on.
Fine.
It's nothing.
I've got 2 pairs of hands, 50% extra hands, 50% extra pair of walking legs.
Wow, and it's all about even numbers. If you've got one, you might as well have 2. If you've got 3, you might as well have 4. If you've got 5, you might as well have 6. It's just how it works.
That's how it works.
Yes. New kind of girl maths, dog maths.
Oh, me and Isobel know, dog maths. That's what it needs to be. Me and Isobel, the girl maths is bad enough. Let alone dog maths. Yeah, that's another level. And okay, so what's your opinion of the breed? Because to me, they're a very quirky breed. They're tiny to me, but they have very loud personalities for their size. So, which always amazes me. So, what's your thoughts on the breed? The good and the bad, I suppose.
I think quirky is maybe a nice way of putting it. I would say 100% they do fit the stereotype. They are fantastic little personalities. They have huge personalities for the size of them, right? But I think maybe if someone like me who doesn't maybe have quite so much patience as Isobel does, they do grind on me a little bit because they are quite vocal. They're protectors. They're a little bit territorial. The postman, he knows not to come too close when he's sort of down the end of the road, and they're vocal and they'll express what they're feeling. They're pretty stubborn, but I think on the flip side, they've got huge personalities and they are incredibly loyal, and they love nothing more than to jump up on your chest and have a little cuddle, which is nice after a long day at work, right?
Yeah, and they don't take up much room. They don't eat that much in the scheme of some dogs that are eating 1 kilo of food a day, raw food a day. So, and they're massively popular, aren't they?
They are, definitely. I'd say in the last, maybe sort of 6, 7, 8 years, they seem to have really kind of blown up in popularity. But I think small dogs in general probably have, and I think as well, having the portable nature of them certainly helps, right? If Surf and Isobel will be going back up to see my parents, we can, we'll chuck all 3 of them in the car. It's not even a question as can we bring the dogs round? They're not. It's not like we're taking 2. German Shepherds around and, it's going to be a little bit more problematic as you sort of bundle them in the car and you're off. And so I think small breeds in general probably are getting more popular. And it was never a desire of mine to have 3 miniature Dachshunds or 3 small dogs, but I do love them.
I mean, you're sounding like a typical partner to a dog owner. That it's not what I thought life would be, but we'll go with it. If you could own a dream dog, what would your dream dog be?
Bernese Mountain Dog, 100%. I've wanted one for a long while. I kind of saw myself having one of those, not a little army of Dachshunds kind of running along behind me.
An army.
I do get stopped a lot. I do get stopped a lot on walks because I'm somewhere between 6'2" and 6'3", and I literally have the smallest dog I could find. So the little old ladies love to stop me and make reference to that.
So would you be overcompensating to get a Bernese?
I just absolutely love the look of them, right? I think they're beautiful creatures, and there's a big old list. There's a list probably about as long as my arm of dogs that I would have. To be fair, probably wouldn't a few years ago have even put a Dachshund on there or a miniature Dachshund.
Well, there you go. What do you think about
that?
There you
go. Open your eyes to the dark side.
We're going to have to start some counselling at some
point. Brought him to the dark side. Brought him to the dark side and some. As we said, we're already at 3. 4th is in the pipeline. Let's go.
Well, I tell you now, you're not chucking a Bernese Mountain Dog in the car and going away for a long weekend without planning it or thinking about it or scheduling it. So that will change some plans quite significantly. And I guess the fare, I don't even know what the fare is like on them about grooming and compared to a short haired.
Intense, massively different. I mean, I grew up with long-haired breeds as well myself. We had German Shepherds too, and dark ones. So I'm used to the little tumbleweeds of fur floating across the lounge floor and whatnot, and it doesn't bother me too much. And I don't particularly short-haired breeds. It's nothing. But yeah, I think it's a different ballgame when you've got a dog-coated long-furred breed. That's going to be intense.
I just saw on Facebook someone had a swatch of a sofa, and they were. To pick their new sofa, and they had their dog, and the swatch was the closest colour to this yellow Labrador, and they were like, we found the perfect sofa colour. I thought that's a really good idea.
That's really clever. I like that.
So, Harry, you've also not just been co-opted in as being a dog owner, but also, I guess, a dog breeder, because Isobel has bred litters while you've been together, and you do have a stud dog. What was your initial thoughts on getting involved with all that kind of activity, not just being sort of a straightforward dog owner?
Yeah, so I think initially it's worth mentioning, as like I say, growing up, I kind of always had a desire to have dogs. There was never really any, I kind of never give any thought to either being a sort of dog breeder or being involved in sort of anyone's breeding journey. It just sort of hadn't sort of come up in sort of my agenda. But I think I know one way that sort of Isobel kind of justified it to me at the time was, well, look, let's have a litter and then we can keep one, because I'm desperate to have another one. So rather than going out and, and sort of on a bit of a whim maybe and buying one, having not known the sort of pedigree behind it and not necessarily knowing the kind of the quirks, if you like, Isobel was like, well, we may as well kind of breed from sort of, the existing sort of dogs that we have in the family, which initially started with Izzy's mum, who's had specifically Dachshunds for a long time. So that I think was a little bit more of a soft introduction, if you like, because it was more we were kind of getting involved, or I was getting involved in sort of my initial breeding experience was because there was a kind of a desire to keep one of the puppies from the litter in there. So it wasn't quite a hard introduction of, right, let's just start doing this and yeah, it was a nice experience my first time, and feeling that, the experiences and the journey that you go on through the whole sort of from stud to, sort of post welt and actually raising the puppies. It was a really nice first experience. And I think having that and having fond memories of that has kind of made me want to be a part of other people's experience who are looking to do it in the right way, if that sort of makes any sense.
Yeah. So was there anything particularly surprising, or I don't know, that you just thought, oh, I didn't realise dog breeders or somebody that's breeding their dog has to consider this or go through these points or emotions? Or was it harder work than you thought it might be?
100%. Again, having not really given any thought to it, like I guess that, the majority of either non-dog owners or dog owners that haven't really thought about it. Yeah, I mean, like the amount of sort of planning that sort of needs to go into it. There's so many things that you need to kind of be clued up on from a kind of health and safety point of view, from your bitch and the litter, but also there's the amount of preparation that needs to go into it, the amount of thought and planning that needs to go into it to make sure that you're putting your bitch or your dog to a relevant counterpart with a pedigree that aligns and not kind of breeding in the wrong things. I think that there's a whole kind of a research piece to be done before you start, and I think the sleepless nights and the kind of risk of things going wrong, and yeah, there's so much more to it than I ever would have kind of realised, and they require a lot more sort of care and attention, particularly in the first couple of weeks, than I would have kind of expected. You hear about friends or friends kind of having litters, and I guess unless you kind of drill down into it, people kind of remember the fonder sort of side of it and say, yeah, no, it's really easy, it all went really smoothly and nicely. And maybe those people have been lucky, but I have heard a few sort of horror stories, and yeah, you do realise there's a lot that needs to go into it in terms of planning and sort of in being dedicated.
And I suppose, I mean, that's one of the benefits of having Isobel, is that she's forced you through those aspects. Because if you were both clueless, if you both just went, oh yeah, should we give it a go? You're both in the same point. But the fact that you have got quite a knowledge difference between what Isobel knows and what you know, and she's trying to educate you to know we do things properly. This is, yeah, we can cut corners, but to do things ethically and responsibly and safely, these are the methods we need to do that. Would you agree with that, Isobel, if I just put words in your mouth?
Absolutely. I think, no, completely. Essentially, Harry's had a whistle-stop tour of 25 years of breeding knowledge crammed into the decade we've been together. So he's been brought up to speed at an incredible rate of knots, because I've essentially mentored him without doing so directly, because I do things the way I do them because of knowledge or what I've learned or peers. And Harry's learnt that firsthand. So like you said, if we were both on the novice playing field and it was our first litter together, you can see how steep that learning curve would be, through probably a lot more challenges and failures where you would just be reading on Facebook groups or Google going, oh goodness, this has happened, what do we do? Rather than once you've been breeding long enough and you've got that knowledge and you've got a couple of decades under your belt, it's a matter of, oh yeah, I've seen that before, oh yeah, my friend's had that before, and you just take everything in your stride a little bit more.
I guess it's that it's not just that you've bred, you also have a stud dog. So you're also supporting people that come to you and trying to mentor them. I know, Isobel, you said to me, Harry's picked up on some stuff really quick where you said various things to people inquiring about stud. Harry's obviously heard it, understood it, run with it. So then when you next get your stud inquiry or someone asks that question, he's been able to pass on that information to the next person. So how have you found it owning a stud dog, Harry? Because it's hard work. People never really appreciate the difficulties and complexities of managing female owners, let alone actually getting a breeding done.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. So I think the providing of the service, if you like, is maybe 50% of it, and it's the easiest 50% of it in most cases. The journey starts a lot earlier than that, and it's the managing of expectations, the dealing with bitch owners and trying to ensure firstly that they're doing it for the right reason. If I'm going to let my boy be used by somebody, I want to know that, well, actually, you are in this for the right reason. So there's a little bit of sort of ensuring expectations are aligned and that you're on the same page. But just the amount of queries, and I think I'm quite sort of open in terms of if you have any queries or, there are things you're not sure about, I'll be quite hands-on from way before, sort of the mating or way before the bitch is even in season. And I think it's important to do that just to kind of ensure that, the entire breeding journey goes as smooth as possible. But the managing of bitch owners can be quite tricky at times, I think. And you can give your advice and you can sort of pass on the knowledge and the experience that you've gained. And when people necessarily sometimes don't want to take that, it can be a little bit of a challenge in retrospective conversation down the line. But I think, in terms of actually sort of owning a stud dog, to go back to the original question, it's been way easier having a boy who is entire in the house, way easier than I kind of ever thought it would be, because you hear about this a lot of the time that they get quite sort of territorial and can be sort of scent marking, and it changes the personalities completely. Luckily with our boy, that's not happened to me at all, which has been amazing, because he's still just as good a sort of pet as he always was, and that's, first and foremost, that's what they are, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 1,000%. What's the breadth of bitch owners that you find, the different knowledge levels?
I think that's a really good question. And I think you'll see in Harry's response as well, how depending on where you fall in that spectrum, there's people that may not even align with our value, because it's one of the first things that Harry does for the stud inquiry is have the conversation of what is your current knowledge. And I think more so than knowledge, it's what's your desire to learn and do better.
Yeah, I think it's worth by starting and maybe sort of outlining, I guess, the range or the broad sort of spectrum of experience that people have, could pick up on that fairly quickly when we have sort of initial inquiries come in. And we kind of split it down into maybe 4 sort of groups, very crudely, of or levels of experience, if you like, that we sort of deal with. And there's one of those groups that frustrates me a little bit, which I'll come on to in a minute. But the first one, you have, absolute sort of beginners, haven't done it before, would maybe like myself and Isobel, they want to have a litter so they can keep a puppy from it. They don't know how it works. They don't know exactly what's involved. But as a stud owner, you're the first port of call. So that's a really good opportunity to, again, make sure not only doing it for the right reason, but they can have the best kind of start. And you generally find with these kind of people, a lot of advice is appreciated at that point. And which is fantastic, right? The second group, I would say, are the kind of slightly experienced, maybe have had 1 or 2 litters, but again, are still, maybe they've used a different stud dog in the past, or maybe they've bred, a different breed in the past. Again, still quite open to interpretation for information and happy to kind of receive any kind of bits and pieces you can pass on. It's the third group is a group that frustrates me a little bit, and it's those individuals that have maybe had, 3 or 4 litters in the past and maybe make out as if they've had 200, and
they know it all.
The one litter Lucy's.
It's the people that have had a litter or 2 and they think, that they've encountered every single thing that can go wrong. I'm sort of quite happy to take a step back at that point and say, look, that's fine. I'll kind of say, well, look, if you're kind of setting your ways, this, that, and the other, you probably may not get that far, and maybe we won't kind of be proceeding with, the mating. But yeah, and then the fourth group, we have some really experienced breeders that have been breeding for 10, 20 years, 1 or 2 cases even more. And these are, you can tell like straight away, these are the kind of the bitch owners that know exactly what they're doing. And again, that experience is invaluable, because they've probably seen and dealt with every possible thing going wrong that can go wrong. But I think to answer the sort of question, initially upon the sort of, I guess, at first screening chat, if you like, I'll very quickly decide within, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds. And I think that for me, again, I've probably always been one to maybe judge people a bit sooner than maybe I should. I know Isobel's a little bit more steady aware with that. But for me, it's understanding intention, right? Intention's there. And that for me is the first port of call, right? I want to ensure my studs puppies have the best start in life. So quickly understanding, much like if you are going to sell puppies to someone, you want to know that they're going to care for them in the right way. They're going to have the right setup and they've got everything they need to thrive. And that, I would say, strikes maybe the kind of initial contact list in half immediately. The amount of queries we get from people I would say I'm not aligned with, maybe is the right way of saying it. There's a huge volume of them. And as you've kind of alluded to already, Sarah, it's quite a time, or can be quite a time-intensive process. So for me, maybe a little bit crudely or not, I'll kind of, strike out the people that I straight away that I don't think, we're kind of on the same page, which kind of leaves more time for the people that are looking to do it in the right way, experienced or not. That's where I want to give my time. And I think Isobel and I are quite aligned on that.
Absolutely.
Is this through various mediums, whether it be messenger, whether it be phone calls? I think dog people like to talk, don't they? So do you find you get more calls rather than messages, or am I just making out?
It's definitely more phone calls, which is something that has been somewhat difficult for me to manage, as I do have a sort of time job that's quite demanding. So not always been able to deal with people's calls has been a little bit of a challenge. But the thing that kind of gets me with that is what I don't want to do is not get back to people within, a sort of soon enough time frame, and then maybe they go and make a wrong decision and use, a different stud whereby I think maybe the dog's all right, but the experience or what they can give you might not be exactly the same. So I'd like to say, I think a lot of kind of calls will come in straight off the bat and you're answering every call up and it's not somebody trying to sell you insurance or this, that and the other. But there are sort of several mechanisms and websites and bits and pieces that, we have kind of a stud advert or a profile, as well as our own website, which we do sort of receive inquiries through, which is really positive.
And I'm interested to know, are there any like trigger words that you just straight away think, yay, equally, or nay? For instance, it always makes me chuckle a little bit when some people say to me, oh, my dog's on my period. That tells me you're a novice breeder, you've never bred before. That tells me the knowledge level immediately of that type of person, where someone might say,
do you know what's when we get an inquiry from someone saying, my bitch is in season, is your boy available next week? And I know that's not in one word or a buzz. That's to both Harry and I has always been a bit of a, because it's either somebody that's highly experienced and knows their female inside out and is doing their ovulation testing and knows their bitch's pedigree and has chosen our boy because of the fact that pedigree's aligned and they've done their research, which is unlikely, but it could be that. On the other hand, it's people that have gone, my bitch is on her period and let's go get her lined. And I'm like, okay, this isn't really the typical owner that we deal with, because we encourage people to be getting in touch months in advance, because that's how much research you should be doing. And if we mentor you over the months prior and then you don't use our stud, that's absolutely fine, because we've imparted knowledge on you that would have helped you to go and make a better decision anyway. So I think that's a bit of a waving red flag to us if we get my bitch is on her period and is your boy available next week? Like, no, sorry, this isn't how this works. You can't just call up and book in to use our boy. You need to call us. We need to screen you. We need to have the conversation, discuss pedigrees, discuss your motives, and then we can see if he may be available for you next week. So I think it's one of those, it makes me laugh a little bit when people just sort of assume that they can just book in, and you think,
Well, that's because they just deem it as a service. I mean, when you think, Isobel, we've had people ring and they think I have jars of dog sperm and that I can just put it in a bitch and I don't know what they should like. I've got cupboards of stuff and I'm like, no, you need to still go and find your stud dog. I can't do that bit. So yeah, if you don't know, you don't know, do you? So they just assume if I'm paying the money, I'm getting the service, and that's when I want the service, and that's when it should happen. But as you rightly said, it's the output of what, if it's a service with no output, then fair enough. But no, the plan is puppies will be produced from this. And I want to know that the well-being of these puppies and your knowledge is able to rear them to the safe standard, that they can then be placed into new homes and all the rest of it. So it's just the beginning, isn't it, for you guys? That's just the beginning, where other people just go, no, that's just the service and I pay for that and then I'll get on with my day. I would love to know, Harry, what your thoughts were in regards to stud matings and whether they go to plan or not, or how long they take.
Yeah, timing wise, I'll start with that one because that's generally an easy one. We allow about an hour or so. I like to allow enough time to kind of make sure that, it's not a case of, right, come in, dogs together, off you go. Do you know what I mean? So there's, for me, the best breeding experience for the bitch is the most comfortable breeding experience, right? I think, having a bit of a 10-minute meet and greet, sort of stick the kettle on, make a bit of a coffee, ensure that, one, the owner's feeling quite comfortable and quite happy, but also the bitch has a bit of a chance to meet the stud and, maybe they have a little bit of a play, or they can sort of 5 minutes. Sometimes they may not need it, right? And you sort of put them on the floor together or whatever, and they'll be just trying to get straight down to it. But also, I generally try to allow a sort of 15, 20 minutes after the meeting, just to kind of run through, here's what the next steps are. Here's really what you can do in terms of, ultrasound scanning and bits and pieces like that maybe the sort of the breeder has or hasn't come across. So I think, leaving that sort of 15, 20 minutes at the end, and I think, the meeting itself, kind of depending on tire duration, can be somewhere between, sort of 10, 15 minutes up to sort of 45, 50 minutes in some quite sorry cases. Does it always go to plan? No, it doesn't. I would say in terms of percentage success rate, it's definitely getting better in terms of having a successful mating, because I am being a little bit, Isobel, maybe not quite so much, but I'm being a lot more pushy in terms of making sure that breeders are doing the right things pre-mating. So a big one for me is, and something we've always recommended, progesterone testing. And quite a lot of the time, well, all the time that we have an unsuccessful mating, it's because the bitch has come and it's the wrong time. Despite the bitch only going, oh, well, she's flagging, all my other dogs sniffing her, all, I think she's ready. I've always gone on a day, 9 or 11 or whatever it may be before. You're pissing in the wind, really, aren't you? So for me, doing something that can give you absolute clarity on when the right time to mate your bitch is, not only is that better because your bitches are most fertile, right? So for the prospective, for the breeder, they're going to likely have the biggest litter if you breed them at the right time. But it just ends up being a waste of everybody's time, because, my study, he knows, and there's a window. If he knows that the bitch is ovulating, he'll be super, super interested. And really, it's kind of a day or two generally we want to kind of have a successful mating after that. It's not that easy to tell when your bitch is ready. If we've got a couple of bitches here, managing those when my stud's around is not that easy when they're in season. They would be receptive for a longer period than what is the right window to actually do the mating in. So that just wastes everybody's time, and this is why we strongly recommend progesterone testing. And I'm trying to push for not letting people come and use my stud if they don't progesterone test. Now, Isobel, again, with more exposure in the industry, is it maybe has a bit of a disagreement on that, because there are people who are experienced and know what they're doing and maybe haven't progesterone tested but have not needed to. But for me, put it this way, if you've progesterone tested, you're 100% going to have a successful mating, and there's not really been a case where we haven't, apart from maybe once or twice where some bitches just are not happy to have a dog on the back of them and don't like the feeling of being mounted.
Do you want to add to that, Isobel, before I say my bit? Though Harry took the words out of my mouth in regards to testing.
Yeah, no, he did. And I think you've explained it beautifully. And as much as if you're planning to breed, there are multiple people's time involved. There are living, breathing, little dogs involved. And for the bitch to have the safest, most natural mating and a pleasant experience, progesterone testing is vital, because she will naturally be most receptive to a male in that optimal window, which is what we always say is so important, particularly for maiden bitches, because they may not have even played rough and tumble with a male dog before. So having a boy jump her is a completely novel experience. So I'm all for progesterone testing. However, there are certain cases, as Harry said, where we are dealing with more seasoned breeders that have been breeding 20, 30, 40 years and have done so before progesterone testing and understand their pack dynamics well enough that they feel that they can correctly identify the ovulation point of their female cycle, in which case they are the sort of people that I would say, okay, that's fair enough if you don't want to progesterone test, because you are experienced enough to pick up on some of those signs that potentially new or more novice breeders would miss when it comes around to ascertaining the right window. So I'm not a strict, you absolutely have to progesterone test, but I can't understand why anyone wouldn't. I would never breed not progesterone testing.
Given the breed, bulldogs, most people will think you were crazy if you did an ovulation test. They would literally be like, you're wasting your time, what are you doing? And I think some breed, that attitude is less, and the Dachshunds are more like that. And especially somebody that has lineage, they have generations of, and they never have tested, then to them, and it's worked seemingly, why would they start testing now? So yeah, I see both sides of the coin on that one. I think it is breed dependent. But from a stud owner's point of view, I think it's just so much more beneficial knowing that for you to give the best service, if everyone tested,
Absolutely.
you know you've done your best to get the breeding done, where when they haven't tested it, there's always that little seed of doubt now because we're not 100% sure she has even ovulated. So, yeah, I think that the points raised are valid.
I think just to add to that as well, Sarah, it's 9 times out of 10 the reason why bitch owners aren't progesterone testing isn't because they are incredibly experienced. For me, it's a sign of, well, no, I'm not bothering with that because there's money they don't want to spend on it, which kind of says to me, are you doing it maybe in the way that I would like to see you doing it?
Well, it kind of says, if you're cutting this corner, what else will you cut corners on? So let me ask you a question in regards to your post-breeding support, such as, do you do stud contracts? What information do you provide the breeder between the mating, pups being born, that kind of conversation? Because unfortunately, that's where the majority of stud owners do not get involved. However, I would deem that ethical, responsible stud owners, they carry on that relationship after the breeding.
I'm quite glad you said that, because that's exactly what we do. It's been a part of the breeding experience. We're there, and I operate a very open door type policy, if you like. So having experience between myself and Isobel, it's in my mind, we're there to be used. Right, we're another resource that a breeder can use throughout their entire experience. I think we're not really trying to kind of be different and stand out from everybody else. I think a majority of stud owners don't do this. I think everybody should, out of responsibility and being a part of that and trying to better your specific breed and ensure that people are breeding in the right way. I think Isobel's probably would like to, or has probably got one or two things that she'd want to say on this.
Yeah, I can't comprehend why any novice breeder would use a stud that provided simply a mating service and didn't provide a stud service. And I think it could be due to lack of knowledge, that because we call it a stud dog and it's a stud service, that it's assumed that people are paying simply for a mating. So when you see stud prices ranging from this amount to this amount and bitch owners are searching, they're assuming they're just paying for a mating. In our scenario, that is just simply not the case. Our support is not a mating. You are not paying a mating fee with us because that is not what we're about. We feel a strong responsibility to ensure that our stud dogs' puppies have the best starts in life. So the support only just begins at the mating. And as far as I see it, that is the beginning of our service that we are delivering, because that is where, yes, you've done the mating. Well, that's merely hopefully the conception part. What comes next? Obviously, being the canine nutrition coach, there's an awful lot of extra knowledge that I impart on our bitch owners throughout the pregnancy, even things down to Dachshunds aren't a particularly easy breed to breed. They're not difficult in the most difficult categories, such as your bulldog, Sarah, but they certainly have specific quirks. So they are prone to inertia, which is where labour stalls. They are prone to longer and more drawn out whelps as well, and whelping pauses. It's not unheard of to hear of miniature dachshunds in particular needing C-sections. So there are so many supplements that bitch owners of this breed do need to be aware of. So I see that as merely a responsibility and obligation for me to be giving that knowledge, particularly to new breeders, that can therefore keep their bitch safe and those puppies safe, particularly during the whelping stages. Albeit I'm not awake 24 hours a day and all around the clock, so should a bitch owner contact me at 4 o'clock in the morning, obviously I would be asleep. But, we are absolutely on hand for ongoing support, not to mention the fact that obviously, as a canine nutrition coach, I've got the support club as well. So all of our bitch owners are invited straight into that, where again, they're receiving a really structured monthly contact-based coaching program from us as well. So it's just incredibly comprehensive. And like Harry said, not that we do this to stand out, but it's frankly incomparable to other stud services on the market, because merely just from my obviously occupation and the business I've got alone, not to mention the fact that we've got, decades of experience in the breed and breeding as well.
I imagine there is confusion over the stud service and stud fee, because I'm sure you've had it. Some people will think they're paying for puppies when they're not. They're paying for a mating. So I think that adds an element of confusion. And then obviously some people just don't realise that you should be going to studs that have some extensive amount of knowledge about breeding that breed, not just a case that they've got a dog and they want someone to use it. And so I imagine maybe that's where it gets all a bit blurry lined. And so, it just gets all a bit grey and messy and people don't really know what to expect. Just quickly, because I'm conscious of time, what aftercare do you offer in regards to, you said about support and knowledge, do you do a stud contract? Do you give them any other supporting materials?
We do, yeah. So we have a stud contract which will be signed by both parties, and both parties will return a copy. In essence, that will cover a range of things, which I won't go into detail here, but it's not, hugely lengthy, but it's just a bit of assurance either side for both parties. As a part of that, we do offer a free remit if the bitch is progesterone tested and misses. If the bitch hasn't progesterone tested, we offer a reduced fee mate in the next time, because, and realistically, we can't be sure we've pinpointed the mitten at the right time. So that's kind of included in the stud contract. I think as a part of that, Isobel gives, a huge amount of sort of knowledge and little tips and tricks in terms of what a bitch owners can be doing in terms of dietary and nutritional requirements.
We give a full mini book essentially on what to expect through the pregnancy, broken down week by week, that they take home with them, which is written by ourselves and from our experiences, particularly breed specific. So that's a really useful tool. They also leave us, goes out saying, copy of pedigree. They also leave us with the wonderful pregnancy predictor made by the wonderful Canine Family Planner. And absolutely anyone that lays hands on this fantastic tool is always absolutely beside themselves with joy, going, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Why have I never seen one of these before, regardless of their experience level. So I love giving those out. What else, Harry? They also leave us with the critical care sheet as well from Breeders' Brew Series 1 handout, which is available on the website, which is fantastic. I have them printed out and stuffed in every drawer, not to mention on my desktop computer, saved on my phone. So again, everyone needs to have a printed copy of that. But it is really comprehensive. They essentially leave us with an entire printed pack, if not folder, of information, essentially. So...
yeah, I think that covers all of it. Aside from that, very sort of cliche, but I would say they leave with a sort of a big feeling of satisfaction that they have kind of picked the right stud. We've had not one single person leave us and say, or, kind of not feel overly elated and 100% like they've made the right decision. And it's really positive getting that feedback when some of these bitch owners have used different bitches in the past and had completely different experiences. Kind of, feeling and getting that feedback that actually everybody who leaves you feels like they've left with something better. And, we learn something from every bitch owner that comes in. We'll learn from, and they'll, hopefully learn something from us. And yeah, for me, it's a rewarding process, and that, that's why we do it.
I imagine that you don't know what you don't know. So if you've always just gone to studs and you just turned up and they donated their sperm and off you go, you think that that's what you get until you come across stud owners that are offering a better service, more comprehensive level of knowledge and information, that now they're like, oh, right, no, that's where the benchmark is. And yeah, I've been massively undersold with all the other stuff and previous experiences that they had, whether they worked or not, the experience will not be the same. And to have that support we've talked about before, Isobel, is that breeding can feel quite isolating. So you really do need a support team, and to have your stud owner as part of that team is next level. It can be, life-saving for the bitch, for the puppies. So why not have that really good, strong relationship? And it's great to see people like you that have fostered that attitude to providing that information, support and advice, because it's not as common an occurrence as it probably should be.
Yeah, I think just to add to that as well, it's the community that you bring. So as a stud owner, you're generally the first point of contact in anyone's breeding experience. Now, we have a sort of a wealth of connections, I would say, in terms of, be it vets or people like yourself, Sarah, who are kind of experts in the sort of fertility side of things, opening and providing a little bit of, well, actually, you should speak to this person if you have that problem, or this person provides a great service here and this person can do that, and opening up that sort of community and sharing those key contacts, I think can definitely sort of stop people from feeling quite as isolated on the breeding journey.
Harry, it's been great to talk to you. I think you've brought some brilliant insight from a different perspective to what Isobel and I are normally used to, because we rattle on non-stop about what we know and have sometimes probably a fixed perspective. So it's good to see somebody that's actually quite in-depth in the breeding of dogs, but fairly new to the process, but doing it the right way. So hopefully that opens the eyes of others that they can do the same, and that they can get their other halves roped in to be doing the same as well.
Bring them to the dark side.
So yeah, it's a thank you ever so much for your time, energy and effort. And I hope people have enjoyed this podcast and enjoyed that Harry and Isobel didn't have an argument while we were doing this recording, which is amazing. They'll have a domestic once we all sign off.
Win-win. Thanks a lot for having me, Beth.
He's had me lining up the fourth dog, hasn't he, in this podcast episode? So dear, oh dear.
That's true. So watch this space, people.
Space.
Series 6, there'll be another dog. All right then. Right. Thank you ever so much.
All right. Thank you, Beth.
Bye.
Over and
Bye-bye.
out. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did recording it. I'm sure you've probably worked out by now that not all Facebook whelping groups are made equal. We strongly recommend you come and join us by simply searching Breeders Brew Community on Facebook and requesting to join the group filled with proactive and passionate puppy practitioners.